Today's topic is exploring argumentation. That means how you present ideas to support an argument that you are trying to make in your writing. Our focus is going to be on logical fallacies. A logical fallacy is an error in reasoning that invalidates an argument. For example, if I say, well, penguins are black and white, and some old TV shows are black and white, therefore some penguins must be TV shows. That's an error in logic because clearly penguins are not old TV shows. So these are things to look out for as you do research. What kinds of support do you want to include? What kinds of articles do you want to, borrow ideas from to support your own ideas? And also, how can you present your ideas by avoiding logical fallacies so that you can write the best papers possible? Today we're going to use the article Access to Violence Alters Boys' Brains. This is from Huffington Post, the HuffPost Parents section, by Dr. Gail Gross. And if you want to go ahead and read it ahead of time, you can before finishing the rest of this video. However, in summary, this is about the fact that the youth have too much access to video games, TV, and other online media that contains so much violence that it's actually altering the chemical makeup of our brains and therefore leading boys to have more aggressive behavior. And there needs to be some solution to that. So that's what she really touches on in this article. The fallacies we will discuss are listed below. Note please that there are a lot more fallacies than this, but for our purposes these are the fallacies that are apparent in this article and in the articles that we will use in class. So it's not necessarily important to know the names so much as what they look like in context in an article. So don't feel like you need to memorize these by any means. This is more to look at how to see arguments in a logical fashion and looking out for bad argumentation. So keep that in mind as well. So in the beginning of this article, the author first argues here a couple different things. The first thing she argues is that watching television makes you react emotionally as if what's happening on TV is happening to you. This is what we would call a non sequitur, meaning the logic doesn't follow. Because who is to say that whenever anybody watches television, you react as if it's happening to you? You can't say that without explaining how and why. So this is a non sequitur. Logic doesn't follow here. It's not clear how one is related to the other. Another logical fallacy here is that the average American spends 50 hours per week in front of some screen or another. This is generalizing all youth. Even though it does say the average American youth, that's a pretty big claim to make without any sort of statistic or research to back that up. Did you poll people? I'm not really sure. So again, that's a hasty generalization where you're taking an idea and applying it to a large group of people without any proof. It would be like saying all Americans eat fast food, or most Americans do. Can you really prove that? Another argument or logical fallacy here is begging the question by saying that constant exposure to violent video games, television shows, and movies impact the brain. Begging the question means I'm making some sort of claim without any support. And the claim here is that 50 hours of screen time is spent watching only violent video games, television, and movies. So saying that, okay, yes, they're watching 50 hours per week, but I'm also saying now there's an implication that it's always violent content, and there's no proof of that either. So they're begging the question, like a beggar on the street saying, give me food, but I'm not giving you anything back. So she would need to prove that 50 hours per week is spent watching solely violent video games, violent television, violent movies. All right, so next, we're looking at more support for this idea. And here we see in this argumentation a couple different things. So another logical fallacy that is committed by this author is the fact that she's appealing to authority here. We have Dr. John P. Murray, we have Dr. Craig A. Anderson, but there's no citation. So what the author is doing is saying, hey, they're doctors, they're experts in the field, and if they say it, then it's got to be good, right? Because they're doctors. They wouldn't lie to you. And this is an appeal to authority where the author uses an authoritative source and then doesn't end up explaining the idea correctly. What I mean by that is, if we look at Dr. John P. Murray, he says that there's this chemical that is released and that creates this relationship between the chemistry of your brain and your violent content. So, coming to this conclusion that when boys are exposed to media violence, then they changes the makeup in their brain to have PTSD type of symptoms. So, they don't actually explain how. And what I mean by that is, just because there's a relationship that exists does not equal causation. This is another logical fallacy called composition division, where you take some sort of cause-effect relationship and you broaden it to include everything. And just because a relationship might exist does not equal causation, meaning just because something happens when they watch violent shows and something happens in the brain does not equal aggressive behavior. Another thing to note here too is that they beg the question by saying it increases physical violence, verbal aggression, aggressive thoughts, and aggressive emotions. However, they don't actually define what that means. Are they doing that in a play setting where they're playing with their toys in an aggressive manner? Or are they actually taking that out on other children? Or are they taking it out on their parents? So again, you're begging the question by not defining for me what is meant by aggression. Because if it's in play, is that a bad thing? I mean, is it hurting anybody? Whereas, if it's with other children, then yeah, that's something to worry about. And then again, that this aggressive behavior later in life, including physical and spousal abuse, is also begging the question because where's the facts to support that? So, did you do a study and you found that in the majority of your participants, you found this relationship? But again, lacking a lot of citation, a lot of explanation. So that's what appeal to authority really does, is saying, okay, they're doctors, so you're going to take what they say because they have their PhD. However, are they actually proving anything in their argumentation? That's what you need to look for. And the final logical fallacy in this argument is the fact that the author focuses solely on boys. And it's not very clear where that data came from. Was there a study done where they looked at boys? Why not girls? So here they're committing a logical fallacy called hypostatization, where you take your subject and you say, all boys do this. And in this case, all boys have aggressive behavior when they are exposed to media violence. So, without some sort of study that shows that it's all boys and not girls, and, is it all American boys? Is it all boys in all the world? It would be like saying, all doctors say that you should not drink coffee. Or, do all doctors really agree on the same thing? Do all scientists really say the same thing? No, of course not. They tend to have differing opinions. So you can't say that all boys have this one behavior without some sort of support for that to prove that you looked at every single boy in the world and can, prove that, or in America, depending on, where this study is focusing on, which I think is America. So, in conclusion, there are 3 things I want you to take away. The first is that genre will impact your argumentation, meaning this article was from the Huffington Post, which, there's no references pages or things like that. So, they are more likely to commit logical fallacies because their readers or their audience are not other scholars. It's a general audience. You're there to get out your point of view, your story, to entertain your readers, not necessarily to prove a study. So, when you see more research types of papers, you're going to see less logical fallacies than in a magazine article or an online article like this. Second thing is that It's your job to be critical readers. Ask yourself, does the author support his or her idea? Is it well explained? Is it well supported? What kinds of sources are they using? What kinds of authoritative figures are they using for their argument? And the third is that you don't want to commit these fallacies. So you want to create a solid argument that is going to get your ideas across for your purposes in the best way possible. So avoiding these fallacies will allow you to do that. All right, thank you so much for watching, and I hope that you can subscribe below. Keep calm and love your English classes.